Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's April 3rd, 2021, and I got a comment on one of my videos recently, and I thought I'd share the comment and question. So this is from Dave and Anita, and it's responding to transplanting locust trees, and I'm not sure how long ago that video was done. Thank you for the information. I am in the process of removing a thorned locust out of my veggie garden. Been there for 4 years. Hard to get it out of compacted soil. Trimming roots as I go. I have not yet reached the main taproot yet. Question how much I can cut off of the taproot, and will the tree survive above ground in a large planter? Thanks. So I'll do my best answering this question. There will be some video. I just got done transplanting a couple of trees, but the video will be about me transplanting a black locust that I had transplanted, probably 2 to 3 years ago, probably 3 years ago. And I'll explain more about that video in just a moment. But I thought I'd start out with some trees are very, very difficult to transplant, but you can have luck. We've had pretty good success with our oak, all right, so the taprooted trees, we think mainly of the nut trees and the pine trees, but there are quite a few other trees. I'm not sure which species Dave is talking about, whether it's a thorned honey locust or black locust and all. This is an example of a thornless honey locust. This is where the root crown is. This is the primary root, which is also referred to as the taproot. These are secondary roots, and you probably can't see there's tertiary roots on this as well. The taproot is a little bit longer. Here is the point where the root crown is, than the entire trunk of the tree. However, there's about this much of the trunk of the tree that is missing because the deer came through and browsed when the snow was just over 1 foot tall. So they chopped off the top of it. So I think in this case, the taproot is about the same length as the main trunk at about 2 to 3 years old. The trunk tends to grow disproportionately longer than the taproot does. The taproot stores so many of the excuse me, in the species that have taproots, so much of the starches which are the energy units that are going to be necessary to start photosynthesis in the very beginning, to get all the buds open, get the leaves open and start doing photosynthesis. The roots are going to bring water up to the surface utilizing the starches and other elements and minerals that are in the root itself. Get the whole process started, and then through photosynthesis and water, we're going to take the carbon dioxide with the water and transfer it into simple sugars, come down and feed out through the tertiary roots that are in this situation. So the question is, well, how much of this taproot can you actually lose? You can actually lose quite a bit of the taproot, quite honestly. However, if I had compacted soil, as described in the question, I probably would, and I had time, I would probably dissect in, and I didn't have a mini excavator like I have. So I have a mini excavator, and you'll see in the video just how we go about transplanting some of these trees. I transplanted a much larger magnolia than the black locust. But let's say you've just got a shovel, you got some trees that are maybe 6, 8, 10 foot tall at the most. They're a taprooted species and all. I probably would, this time of year, dig down and then dig in laterally or dig on an angle, trying to get down and dissect the root, let's say 2 feet down underground. And if you were to go ahead and cut this root off here and not disturb all the soil for the secondary and tertiary roots that are there, and then you pruned off or maybe even trim the top of the trunk, and because you want to save the tree, then I think you have a better chance, because you're decreasing the demand on the roots and decreasing the resources of the roots as well. There's more starches up near the root crown, and as because the taproot gets narrower and narrower. But we wouldn't want to disturb too many of these roots up here. We'd want them to go out laterally, and all of the secondary would send out more and more tertiary, so they'd have more side branching, just like you would see in the tree branches. That would force that to happen. That way you have a shallower root ball to move out. I hope that makes sense. The key things about transplanting trees, in my opinion, or any plant, is you're going to have the most success when the trees are dormant. So when the leaves have fallen in the fall, or they have turned completely brown, like with beech trees or with oak trees, you'll see them really get turned brown and start to dry out. That tree has gone dormant, even though the leaves have not fallen off yet. So you really want to get the trees when they're dormant, or before the buds start to open. So this tree, I can actually wet this down and wet it down every day and keep it in a cool place. Could put it in a refrigerator or keep it in a root cellar, and chances are pretty good that this tree will do well, as long as I keep it moist, keep it dark, and keep it cool. And this tree could get transplanted. Now, it really depends on the variety of tree that you have if you want to keep it in a planter. Recently I posted a video about the issues that I had with taking our citrus trees from outside and bringing them inside. So it started off with mites, and then we got scale after that, and it just had a whole bunch of problems. When we're taking a tree from soil outside, we want to have it to be in similar soil, and we have to feed the soil, always be mulching the soil as well for a tree, because trees are fungally dominated. So we want to give them the woody, mulchy, or straw. We want to feed them rich carbon sources, so the fungi can break them down and feed those trees. Can trees be raised in planters? Yes, they certainly can. Do I have experience with it? No. The experience that I just had with my citrus, after having them for several years and doing so well, I just destroyed them. So I'm not I'm not knowledgeable enough to comment on raising them in planters. But I do know that I've cut off at least 1/3 of the taproot and many of the trees, and they've all come back. The keys are, if you can do it when it's dormant, if you can do it when and prune the tree back some. So if you say, oh my goodness, all the little fine hairs, all the fine little rootlets that are coming out from so this is a primary, this is a secondary, and then off of that are all these little tiny ones. And I know you can't see in this video, but there's lots of little tertiary roots there. So if the soil is falling off, if it's got air pockets down in there, it's going to stress it. If you have mycorrhizal soil amendment, either liquid or powder, and put it down there, that creates a symbiotic relationship with the roots, and therefore that can assist the roots in doing all of the necessary mining of the minerals and doing exchanging with the environmental companions that are around this plant. So mycorrhizal fungi can certainly help if you're stressing the plant somewhat, pruning it back, and definitely doing it when it's dormant. The other thing I would say is, if you have a root ball, if you can get as much of the soil around it, and certainly people can use burlap and nails or staples to hold the burlap to the root ball, so digging a trench right around a large enough area, something that you can pick up and all, and seal the soil in so the soil doesn't fall away from the rootlets. All of these little rootlets can get torn away and can get damaged, and it'll take time for them to heal, especially if they don't have soil around them and moisture around them. So those are my thoughts about transplanting it. So what you're going to see now are some video clips. I put my helmet cam on, hopefully things showed up. I also used my DJI Osmo, and I had a couple of GoPro Hero 7s that I use to try and get as much footage. So in the video, we start off with first, I use my excavator bucket on the mini excavator, the Bumblebee, as opposed to the grading bucket. The excavating bucket has teeth on it, and that gives me a couple of advantages when I'm digging down. One, it gives me more depth. It's like having a hand that's got longer fingers on it when you have the teeth in excavating bucket. Second thing is it's narrower, and I can cut narrow channels out around where the root ball is going to be. Third, I can push mulch away, and this area is heavily mulched. Now, this black locust tree was a tree, and I can't honestly remember where the tree was located, but it needed to be moved out of that area, and I moved it up against a fence line where I've got other trees, and you'll see some of the other trees I transplanted last fall. I've got a maple there that's well over 20 feet, some oaks, some honey locusts, and some, there is a black locust already at one end, and I can't think of the rest of the ones. And then there's elderberry plants in there as well, and there's some horseradish that I forgot about that were in there as companions, and there's other companion plants in there as well, and some of our extra vegetables like our sweet potatoes. I always put extra sweet potatoes over there so the deer will enjoy those sweet potato vines because they love those as well, and that creates more of a ground cover. There's more of a diversity of plants in there, and that really works out as well. So this black locust I had transplanted over into this area. It had a really crooked and gnarly main stem that was secondarily damaged, and it was a deer rub black locust. Now, I've lost some black locust because of deer rub, and that's where I'm putting it, is where the deer rub had really wiped out one of my black locust trees. And that happens to be on top of a stone wall next to pond 5, and so I used the mini excavator. First, I went over to the black locust area, pushed back some of the mulch, and dug down a little bit to see what the roots look like. I could see some of the elderberry roots there. I could see roots from the large maple tree that's just maybe 20 feet away, 18 feet away, possibly. And I could see some of the lateral roots of this black locust tree. So the black locust tree has already made some of these secondary roots really nice and thick. And part of that was because the tree was damaged before. It was pruned down because of the damage from the deer, and I left up one stem that was curled and off to the side that the deer had trampled, and it probably got buried in snow. So after clearing out around the black locust, I went over to the site where I figured I could determine the size of the root ball that I needed and dig down deep enough. I always leave a little extra dirt on the edges so I can push it back in, because once I gather up the tree in the bucket of the tractor, and most of the time, this time I didn't have to do it, I use a bungee cord to help secure it to the stick. So you got a boom, which is the first part that comes out from the excavator, and then you have a stick, and the bucket is on the end. So I can hook the trunk of the tree with a bungee cord to the stick of which holds the bucket. I didn't have to do it with this one. This one I could get on a nice angle and felt I had a good, secure root ball. The tree is dormant, so there's no buds emerging yet. The tree has really nice moist soil, so the soil stayed together in a ball instead of like sand just falling off of the root ball. So those are really good things. And because the soil was loose and not compacted, when I picked the root ball up, other roots pulled out from the heavily mulched area, and the roots came out and they just sort of dangled down from the root ball. So I dug out an area over the stone wall. Fortunately, there was so much soil built up on top of the stone wall. The stone wall is probably 4 to 5 feet above ground level on my neighbor's site, and then I've got a couple of feet of soil on top of that stone wall. So there's plenty of places for that black locust to stick its roots into. Ideally, I would have made, since I had very long secondary roots, these ones that come out from the taproot, since they're probably 4 feet long on each side, and they dangle down below. Now, ideally, I would dig a much wider pit for the root ball to fit into and feed those lateral roots out to the side. That really helps with maintaining the posture that we want with high winds and all. But because I had elderberries planted in between each one of the black locust trees, and I saw that when I started digging, I was disturbing some of those elderberry plants as well, and they're very important. So this is a living fence line composed primarily of black locust trees and elderberry plants intermixed. So black locust, elderberry, and the deer are gobbling the elderberries down each season. Those are ones I put in a year ago. So then all right, once I got the root ball out, I brought it over to the soil on top of the area. I could see that I needed a little bit more soil in the hole. So I took my bucket and I just sort of pushed back the mound that I had there in case my hole was too deep. And indeed the hole was a little bit too deep, because I want the root crown, which is this spot here where we transition from the trunk to the taproot, or the roots and all. The point where you see all these little hairs coming out, that is the root crown. We don't want to bury the root crown. Now there's many different plants we can bury the plant all the way up to here, but trees we don't want to be doing that with. So I saw the level that we're at, and I saw that the hole was too deep for the root ball. Filled in a little bit of the hole, and I put it in. Now, it wasn't a perfect setting. I would have liked it to be closer to the excavator as I was putting it in, because the trees I have in a nice straight line along the property line. It was a little bit away from the excavator, if you will. So I did not, if I had someone else, or I had gotten off the excavator and looked at my hole before I went and got the other tree, I would have made the hole a little bit closer to me on the excavator, more on our property line. But it ended up being okay. I got it in there. I compacted the soil around it. Really easy when the root ball stays together. As I mentioned, the roots were dangling down. I got off the excavator, made sure that they were all going to stay underground. And then I backfilled around it and pushed it and pressed it, compacted the soil around it, which is all beautiful, moist, gorgeous soil at this point. We've had rains recently. Once I got that set, I went ahead and took the excavator out of the area, went back and filled in the hole, and took care of some horseradish over there. But the main thing I wanted to do next was, one of the things we always want to do is when we're taking a plant and we're transplanting it, we always want to look at, okay, there's going to be so much expenditure of the plant, because this plant is going to have to send out, the buds are going to have to emerge, the leaves are going to have to emerge. It's going to take energy to get those photosynthesis developing, so that it can go ahead and send the simple starches down to the simple sugars down to the roots, so it can have exchange with the microbial community within the soil. And it can start repairing, because there is injury to these roots. They may not be dead, but they're injured. So the less demand on the roots we have to take into account. So I removed one of the trunks and I pruned the other trunk. So I took out the big trunk, left the smaller trunk, pruned it, and the reason I kept the smaller trunk is because the tops had been damaged, because wind really does play havoc with the black locusts. They do get damaged, snapped. So I pruned it so that because the winds come out of the west, it blows a lot of the trees, especially if there's lots of branching in them. It tilts the trees to the east, which is an access road that I have. So I often have to push those trees back out after 1 to 2 years, because they start to lean in. But by pruning them appropriately and having the central leader going towards the direction of the wind to the west, that actually helps out a lot. I'm sorry this is such a long-winded explanation, but I wanted to share my thoughts and observations and some of the things that helped me be more successful with transplanting trees. And of course, I've got the advantage because I have Bumblebee, the mini excavator, to do these jobs. But the absolute key thing is doing it when it's dormant. There are ways you can go down this year if you're not in a rush to get that tree out of there. You can cut the taproot here, prune the tree some. that tree will go ahead and extend the roots that are there, the roots that haven't been damaged. It'll create more of a root barrier. If you wanted to, you could go all the way around. If you didn't want your roots to go too far, you could dig down and put sticks, or you could put plastic barrier around the edges and keep the root from expanding beyond there. It sort of makes the roots, like in a pot, become more root bound. They'll start to curl around. Or if you dig down out there far enough and just let it dig a trench around, that will air prune the roots out to the sides. So that's a way of maintaining a root ball that you want to excavate later on. Reach down to the bottom, cut this off, prune this off, and I think you got a decent chance of getting one of these more challenging trees out of the ground and into a location that you'd like. So what'll come up next is the video. Hopefully some of the video turned out so it makes sense. You can see the process that we went through for the black locust tree. If you'd like, I'll try and record some more tree transplants. I just transplanted a second one. I know I'll probably do another dozen in the next week or so. So if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you found this video of value, please give us a thumbs up. And certainly feel free to add in any other tricks that you have, experiences you've had, because we're a community. We can all help each other out as well. Thanks so much for watching, and take care, folks. Stay safe. Bye-bye now. Okay, I just got done. First I came over here to pull back some of the mulch. I approached it from this spot over here, And one of the things I wanted to see, geez, are there lateralized roots coming out of this root base? And I just took a look. I didn't really dig down very far at all. We could see some significant weeds down in here. But this root here, right here, I believe, is one of the roots for, this root right here is one of the roots. So we do have some lateralized roots coming out of the black locust here. This root down here, I believe is, I believe right there, that is one of the elderberries, and it could be coming from this elderberry here. This root here is one of the maple trees right there, the big maple that's there. So I will damage several different roots around here when I dig this up. But I could see that about, coming down from the root crown, we've got some roots coming out not too deep. So I don't have to make a terribly deep hole, but I did make a fairly deep hole. Let's go over and take a look at what we're going to try and do. Fortunately, this is a relatively short distance from where I'm transplanting the tree from to where I'm placing it here. And it's really, this is actually a pretty darn good spot. I'm not sure, when the deer come through and doing their severe deer rubbing, a lot of the times we'll get new shoots coming up from the crown if the roots are in good shape. And the soil over here, although it's all fill from when I did excavation all in this area here, putting in the basements for the thermal mass unit and for the coop and all, this soil looks really good. So we've got on each side, so here's, I'm going to get down in there for a second. So here's an elderberry plant right here. Hopefully this is all showing up. These are roots coming from the elderberry plant. So this, and it's getting ready to throw up a few shoots right here. The deer eat these down all the time. Here's a root coming from one of these black locust trees right here. And there's more elderberry roots in here as well. But this hole actually looks good. We're just getting to the top of the stone wall right down here, and that's about a 5 to 6 foot above ground level that is. Oh, here's actually one of the tags from one of the black locusts a few years ago. So I can get up out of that hole. That hole I think will be a pretty good spot. Now that I see it, I should have come this way a little bit more, but I'll try and position it when I get over there. I don't want it sticking out there too far. I like them pretty much in alignment, but we'll see what we can do. So it's really good to see that the elderberries are getting ready to send up new shoots. If we can just keep the deer from eating all these elderberries down, and if we don't have another severe drought this season, well, that would be just awesome. So I'm going to head back here again and get on the Bumblebee, the mini excavator, and see if I can get some soil. I want as much soil attached to the root ball as possible. I will cut back one of the two trunks that are sticking up there. If I do a lot of damage to the root ball, I'll really cut one trunk completely off and the other trunk with just a couple of buds sticking above ground. Because that way, these guys are really vigorous and they take off just fine as long as we have minimal effort that the roots have to put into branching out and leafing. Remember, this is all new growth since this black locust was put over here. The original one was dead, and this sent up two different shoots. And I like to have just one trunk coming up. And if I stress it enough, if I stress it significantly, the bigger trunk will come off. If I don't stress it that much, and I stress it even more, I'll take even the smaller trunk down lower. It really depends on how much root I've got left and all. And this is really good soil. Underneath the base of this is a hugelkultur pit. So all along in here, I dug down and I laid tree trunks below all of the trees that are here. Then we brought in lots of wood chips on top of that. There is compost down in there as well. And so it's really beautiful, rich soil. But the first thing I've got to do now is get as much of the root ball as I can out of there. And so I'm going to approach it from another angle. I initially came up from this side and scoop back and push some of the chips away. I'll come in over here now and then get it in the bucket and bring it over to where we want to be. Okay, I say I'm really happy with how well it looks like I got the entire taproot out, which is not only 50% of the time do I get the entire taproot out. But this is a tree that doesn't have a very deep taproot, but it has all those radicals, all those lateralizing roots that stick out to the side. Now, if I didn't have elderberries right here and right here, and I didn't want to disturb the roots from these other trees on either side, then I would have made the hole wider and tried to lay out all of the lateral roots instead of pointing them down into the hole that I had dug. One of the things that I think is real important with most trees, not essential with a black locust, but something that I think is pretty important with most trees, is to try, like I move the mulch back, and try and get back down to where the root crown is, right here. So we want to have this just at about the same ground level all along in here, and I could still mulch right up over the top of this. So the one bad thing is I bumped the bucket into here when I was compacting the soil here, but you don't want any air pockets. Now, this is a place where disease can get in, so I've got to choose, am I going to take this one out or am I going to take that one out? Either way, I think it would be fine. This one's a little bit larger, which means I'll get more rapid growth, and hopefully things will work out really well with the longevity. In other words, this tree getting up there and getting big. The other thing I look at is how well the pattern is at the top. Now, the apex is snapped here, it's died back, so this one will be the main leader, and that's leading out this way. This one is more, oh, I just smashed my elderberries. This one is closer to my main line here, and this one's even further away. So this one's damaged. The main leader is going to go inward. The winds come out of the west and head to the east here, and that's going to cause a lot of these trees to tip here. It's not uncommon for, after me getting the trees in here for the first year, I have to tilt them back to the west so that they face into the west, and then when the wind puts them back, it gets them a little bit more straight. Each one of these trees I ended up having to push back. So ideally I'd want to keep this one, but since that central leader there is heading more towards the east, that seems like more and more branches will be overhanging on our access road right here. This one's further away from the main line that I wanted it to be on, but this I think will be the main leader. I can trim this one off, and as this one starts to tilt over some, leading towards the east, I can just keep pruning this one, and I won't have as many branches off that way. So I hope that makes sense. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this one out, even though it's not, and it's bigger, it draws more energy potentially. I don't know that for certain. But I'll get down here as close as I can. I just sharpened these. And while black locusts are young, they're still cuttable. Once they're harvested and they're dead, well, that's a different story. They harden up and are much more difficult. Excuse me here where I'm straining, trying to position myself so I get more of a blade cutting through that bark. So these are bypass pruners. They're loppers, but they're bypass ones. And that did all right. So that's the bigger one. And that's all going to get filled in down there. Now, these are my favorite bypass pruners here. I just got these new ones. These are 1-inch ones. And I'll try and put a link to these ones in the description down below. I have the 3/4 inch one, and they're the best bypass pruners that I own. Hopefully the 1-inch here will do just as well. So I want to reduce the energy requirements for this tree since I'm just transplanting it and thinking about the direction that I want everything to go. Now I don't mind these ones being on the back side, but that's the way I'm pruning this to have the optimal chance. Now, there is some cambium showing here, and that's how we know a tree is viable and all, but that'll heal right up. So that's awesome. I think this one stands at least a 95% chance of being successful. We'll have to see. It's got to get through this summer and get to next spring before I'm going to feel comfortable about it. So we'll see how well these elderberries do this season as well. Oh, I wanted to show you one more thing over where we took the... What the heck's going on here? I have to get used to using the cameras again. The ideal thing is if you have a second person working with you, they can stand to the side and see if your trees are in alignment, if that's important to you. Or you can get your alignment and set down a string, or paint, use some ground paint to paint the line, or using lime and pouring it over your string, and that delineates a nice line. And then when you're on the excavator, it's easier to see just where, if your hole is centered and all. And I try to create the hole before I dig the root ball out, but sometimes I'll try to see just how well the roots are looking. So I came back here with Bumblebee and I filled in the spot. But this is one of the things I'm always talking about, using companion plants and building guilds and all. And so when I was in here, obviously I dug this up. Anyone know what this one is? This is horseradish. So that's one of the things that just reminded me, I've got a whole bunch of horseradish to get transplanted and get out here into the food forest, into each one of the food forests, because I grew it in a single line and geez, we're just not using it enough, and I've got so much of it. So I'll just put that in there and cover that up, and it'll shoot up in no time at all. So I think that's it.